This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'll call the Finance and Personnel Committee for August 15th, 2023 to order. I need a nomination for chair. 3 of our trustees are excused from this meeting, and to make the quorum, we have Mary Kardowski, who could be appointed.
I nominate Mary Kardowski as the chairman.
I second it.
We are unanimous on that, right?
Motion carried. Okay, roll call.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't think I've ever chaired finance and personnel. Roll call, please, Terry. Mary Kudowski. Here. Allison Burnett.
Here.
Tom Selk.
Here.
And Service Luki and Zerbal are excused. Okay, please stand to the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remember our men and women throughout the world in uniform. I have a change here to the agenda. I'm going to do the agenda in just the opposite order. So I'll start with C, then B, then A, just to make it a little easier for today. So I need a motion to approve that with the change.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to change the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Number 5, action on the minutes from the Finance and Personnel Committee from July 18, 2023.
Move to approve the Finance and Personnel minutes from July 18th, 2023.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve those. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Number 6, comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda, must state your name and address. Limited to 5 minutes. The board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personnel issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named, and the board is not able to take action at this meeting. We have no public here in the house. We have no public virtual, so we will move on to the action items. So we're going to start with 7C, update on lead fire inspector and fire inspection service contract. Joel.
Thank you, Mary. This was an item that was described as a future agenda item at the last month's meeting. If you recall, we identified that our lead fire inspector, Dane Peterson, had resigned his position with us and was moving out of state. Basically, was taking a job in South Carolina, or his spouse was, and so he was moving down south, and as a result of that, we were going to be without a lead fire inspector. Our fire inspection program is staffed by 1 full-time lead inspector and then 2 very, very part-time inspectors, and then backfill to some degree with those that are certified as our paid on call members. Some of them are certified as fire inspectors. They do occasionally perform on a very, very spot basis fire inspection duties. So as a result of Danny's departure, we reviewed kind of where we were at to date with our inspection program, and we discovered that we were substantially behind in the number of required inspections to be completed in an annual period. So we are required to do at least 1 inspection on every commercial industrial property per year in order to maintain eligibility for our 2% dues. Under normal state statutes, that requirement is 2 inspections per year, so 1 every 6-month period, unless an ordinance is passed locally that only requires 1 inspection. We have since adopted an ordinance this past year that only requires us to do 1 inspection. And we had done that probably in the spring, I think, as a result of an update to our fire and building codes. Because at that time, we identified some deficiencies in our ability to maintain compliance with that inspection component. If we fail to meet that, we are subject to losing what's commonly called the 2% dues. So the state of Wisconsin provides monies to each municipality if they meet those requirements. The intent of that money is to both provide a reimbursement, if you will, for fire inspection services, but also to provide fire prevention education programs. So when we go into the schools annually in September, October for Fire Prevention Week, that money is designed to support All told, we generally get about $117,000 annually in our 2% dues. So by not meeting that requirement, it's a pretty material number. So recognizing where we were at with the number of inspections completed to date and the remaining time to meet our requirement under the state 2% program, we recognize that we likely would not be able to hire somebody and complete our inspections before the year end. We typically go through a hiring process pretty quickly here. Our goal is to hit kind of a 90-day window. So once we know we have a vacancy, we look to advertise, solicit, recruit, interview, and have a candidate in place functioning in their job within 90 days. That's kind of our target goal. So with Danny leaving at the end of July, in fact, his last day was August 4th, that would put us sometime into October, November before we have somebody kind of like fully functioning in the role. We clearly would not hit our target. So what we did is we went out and solicited firms that do these types of services on a contractual basis. We did end up finding a company between last month's meeting and today that is available to conduct our inspections for the remainder of the year and get them completed. And so we presented that information actually last month to the village board, at which point they approved the contract. We are looking to utilize them. It's kind of it's a running contract, so it's not a termed contract. So we'll continue to use them until such time the department can determine a long-term solution to staffing the fire inspection program. I can tell you based on the financials of using a contracted service, there is a possibility, in fact, a strong possibility that we may look at doing this in perpetuity. Because over time, there'll be a substantial cost savings by contracting it versus having somebody in-house. Things that the department will want to look at is what's lost then by having contracted service, what services are missing versus just physically doing inspections. So they'll be reviewing that over the period of the next few months, and then at that time, they'll come back to both committee and board and present kind of their approach to the topic. So that's where we're at. We have about 1,400 inspections to complete. Typically, we have about 2,000 in a year, so you can see kind of how far behind we are. And those are like static inspections, meaning not special events, not tents, and things like that. So we're entering into a busy season with Packer season opening up, where our part-time inspectors are likely to be more involved in special events and tents. And these full-time or these contracted inspectors will be primarily dealing with brick and mortar type inspections. So we got a lot of work to do, but at the end of the day, the cost to provide wages and benefits to the employee for the remainder of the year would be a lot or more than what we're paying for these inspections at $23 a pound. So I can answer any questions that you have, but that's kind of where we're at today.
Yeah, it's important to note that they're paid by inspection, not by hour.
Right.
So as they complete an inspection, that's what triggers the cost to us, not their hourly rate.
So the part-timers can't step up and do more, or we don't want them to do more?
Well, typically, we kind of don't want them to do more, so the part-timers are limited to the number of hours that they can work in a given year before they are mandated to be entered into the Wisconsin retirement system. And one of the inspectors is right now currently up against that kind of proverbial wall, if you will. So they're throttled right now for the number of hours that they can work over a pay period so that they don't exceed that threshold. Because once they do, even if they are maintained as part-time, they still then have to be benefited by WRS. So it's costly enough to try to avoid that.
But this really is a cost savings, what you're doing, right?
This is a cost savings, yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely going to require the department to think outside the box from what it's been traditionally doing by staffing the position. Because it is routinely a position that does have a high degree of turnover as well.
If the results are the same, why wouldn't you do it?
We just need an inspection to be completed.
And this doesn't have any impact on that community engagement with the schools that's fulfilled by other members of the department?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, our lead fire inspector, although maybe participated in those fire prevention activities at the schools by and large, because all of our public safety officers are trained on retire,
Mhm.
they can perform those duties as well. So oftentimes it's a team approach where you'll have regular officers available to do those programs. Good. That's that.
Okay, information only. Oh, we'll now move on to 7B, Consolidate Employee Retirement Fund to General Fund.
So let me give a little history here. So back in 2012, we created a separate fund. So to track employee retirements. At that time, we're starting to get into tighter budgets. It was really coming out of the 08, 09. And this was a way to take money, allocate it to a separate area for the employee retirements. What the employee retirements are basically when an employee retires once they're vested, they have built up accruals that they're able to pay out. Some of those can be significant in a year. And so it's not an easy area to budget because you don't always know. Sometimes people don't tell you till late December, they're leaving in 2 months. So it was also an area to take any sources of funds. I think the first time we kind of really started funding that was when we closed TIF, we put a portion of dollars towards these types of retirements back when we closed TIF 2. Then since then, we've been funding it with excess dollars at the end of the year. So if you recall, any times that we've, at the end of the year, I say, hey, board, we've got some money, we recommend we put it in the employee retirement fund. So the fund created what's called a special revenue fund, or even if it's a capital project fund, which it really isn't defined for that. So we changed auditors a couple years ago. They looked at this and their opinion was of the fact that, well, it's not really a special revenue fund because the source of revenue is levy dollars ultimately. Yeah, from time to time you may have something else that goes in there, but the primary funding source is levy. Therefore, it should be considered just like the general fund. So they merge everything when we do the end of the year audit and when we do the financial reporting. So there's just always the last few years, there's just this discrepancy between our budget and that, and we'll balance a zero growth to the fund balance in the general fund, and then you'll look at the CAFR or the ACFR and go, hey, why did the general fund lose $150,000? And to key stakeholders that read that, there's a lot of explaining that needs to be done. So I talked to them. I said, is there an easier way to do this since you're merging that anyway? And so we talked through the auditors, and their kind of thought was the same as mine. Why don't you just establish a restricted reserve fund balance account, like a savings account, if you will. It does everything exactly the same way, but then it's just housed in the general fund. We can technically still budget dollars because we do budget a small amount of money to it every year. And then you could, at the end of the year, do the same thing through board action, allocate anything excess into that reserve fund instead of your normal reserve fund. And so everything would act the same. The board would then always have, as they do today, they have the ability to go and say, hey, that employee retirement's really high. Can we use that for some other purpose? And because it's general tax levy dollars, we can't. But it takes a board action to do that. It follows the same suit. It would be what's called like a restricted account. So therefore, Joel and I can't, or any department head can't just access that money. It has to go through the board for it to be removed from that to be used for another purpose. So really, this is more of an accounting behind the scenes, just a more efficient operations internally when it comes to reporting and things like that. The budget's always nice because we're able to differentiate that and see it. We're working towards, I won't quite get there yet this year with a more enhanced budget document that we want to apply with the GFOA to get an award for that, like we do with the ACFR. But part of that is expanding our fund balance accounts and showing them in the budget process. So I will do that this year. I'll have a chart that says, okay, here's fund balance. What does fund balance mean? Here's what it is. Here's restricted amounts. We do have other restricted amounts. For example, if we get a grant into the general fund for a specific purpose, that gets put in a restricted cash account. It can only be used for the purpose of that grant. We have some of those with public safety specifically. They have safety grants or EMS grant money that we get from the state each year. So I will show that so it's still very visible for people to see what we're doing. But we always caution that this fund can be drained. $300,000-$400,000 can be gone really quick. It takes just a couple officers specifically to retire, and that's all contractual with the union. So it's nothing that we can do anything about. So it's something we talk about. Should we budget for it? Should we topic. So that's ultimately what we want to do is, it's really more or less just moving it from here, putting it into the general fund in its own category, but acting all the same.
It made sense in the memo. It seems like it's going to provide those efficiencies and eliminate the need to write those explanations. I didn't have any concerns with it.
Is that a motion? Do you have any questions, Tom?
I agree. I don't think it's okay. I think it should be in there. It's just moving it from one bucket to another. So I'll make the motion to approve the consolidation of the employee retirement fund to the general fund and recommend to the board.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consolidation of the employee retirement fund. Recommendation to the board. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. 7A, Community Center Fire Alarm and Security Panel Upgrade.
Okay, this item is being brought forward to committee and then ultimately village board. It is a project that was not planned for and budgeted. It's the reason why it's coming through committee and then ultimately village board. At our village community center, we have a security monitoring system coupled with a fire monitoring system at the center. And at present, the system itself is, I guess, having issues with false alarms, if you will, and false alerts. And the system itself is coupled. So right now we have a security and fire monitoring system that is kind of one and the same. They're joined. Under current building code, that would not be permitted anymore. You would need separate systems, probably because of the issues we're experiencing with the conjoined system. Ultimately, what's happening is the fire alarm is going into an alert status very, very routinely, and it's setting off an audible alarm within the community center. And then the way the monitoring system works is it dials out to the appropriate party that's designated on the monitoring. So David Rory, our rec supervisor who oversees the community center, will get calls, text messages, emails through all hours of the night as the alarm is setting off. We've gotten to a point now where if it's just these alert systems that he's given an email which he can then disable the notification so it's not disturbing him. But early on in this issue, he would literally get phone calls from the security monitoring system telling him that there's an alert, not necessarily a fire, but an alert at the community center. And at first, he was physically going down there to verify that there wasn't an issue. We thought we had the issue rectified last year through our party that's responsible for maintaining it. It was working correctly for a period of time, but it has since reverted back to that issue. Part of the problem is that the system itself is a proprietary system, and only one vendor can maintain that system. And we've had issues and problems with that vendor. So they have not been completely responsive to our requests and to correcting the issue. So what we would like to do is essentially replace one of the systems, the fire panel in particular, with a different system that would then separate the conjoined system. The monitoring system would be maintained. The fire panel would essentially be replaced and upgraded to a new panel. And that new panel would no longer be a proprietary system, meaning anyone could theoretically maintain it. At present, Martin is the company that we solicited the quote for. So they could install it, they could certainly maintain it, but our current vendor could also maintain it as well if we decide. The community center is the only location where we have that type of proprietary system. So even at Village Hall, Martin maintains our systems here. So we have a strong working relationship with Martin. So we're confident that we would be able to get the service that we need from Martin versus the current vendor to the EST system at the community center. It's really at a point where we'll have older adult programming or classes going on at the community center, and right in the middle of the programming, the alarm goes off. Everyone is wondering, do we need to vacate the building? And this is happening. Well, Tom, you may have recognized it when you were doing tax collection.
We were in there.
Yes. I'm sure it happened very routinely when you were there.
Yeah.
It's probably hard to think about somebody's taxes when the alarm is going on.
First time it happened, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
we have to get out of here now. Kelly comes up, no, don't worry about it, it's a false alarm. You
It's just filling with gas and smoke, but it's fine.
know, no problem.
So ultimately, that's what we're looking to do. Again, this was not a project that we anticipated. We were hoping to actually have this just incorporated in next year's budget, but the alarm is continually going off yet this fall.
Yeah.
And there's a delay, obviously supply chain issues. So we wanted to make sure we could get it ordered now so that we could get it in and not wait till the budget's adopted in November and have another leg. So this is really just an effort to get ahead of issues with supply chain and get the product ordered so that we can get it installed in short order.
So the funds are actually available in the building maintenance fund to do the project now, and then next year the impact is only like $7,900, which is pretty small. But
It's just not
to get it
physically
away
identified
from
in
the
the
whole
budget.
problem. Okay.
Yeah, the funds are available. They just haven't been formally budgeted for. So this is basically an approval to take funds that are in the fund balance in the building maintenance fund and apply them towards this project and more or less amend the budget to reflect that this project's now approved.
My only question was the DMP panel notes existing Genetec system. What is the Genetec system?
That is the current system that's in place, that is proprietary.
Okay.
That we're trying to separate the fire panel.
Got it. Well, I would make a motion to recommend to the village board to approve the quote from Martin Systems to upgrade the fire alarm system in the amount of $24,696.66 as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the quote from Martin in the amount of $24,696.66. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank
On
you.
behalf of David, thank you.
Yeah. So it's
It is
been an
aggravating. It is aggravating.
so you can fix it, just fix it. Okay, number 8, items for next agenda. Greg, I think we'll have Joel.
I don't know that we will yet. Obviously, we'll be knee deep in the budget.
But I'll be here. I don't know. I guess that's right the week when everyone's gonna be wrapping up their budget stuff.
Okay.
And really from here to there, I'm not gonna have any new numbers from the state, so it's just gonna be more or less starting to sort all that stuff out.
If we have a meeting, it may be related to positions that are being considered for inclusion in the 2024 budget. In particular, there will be a conversation regarding code enforcement. So our current part-time code enforcement officer is retiring this year, and so we will be looking at converting that to a full-time position, but modifying it a little bit because it is going to a full-time status. And we may have some other position requests that aren't necessarily, there may be different positions than what have been included in.
How big are those to pull a different financial statement?
Oh, easy.
High level. You know, see how we're doing according to budget.
Yeah, I mean, we're, I don't know if you talk about it.
If we have a meeting, I think we should add that.
Sure.
Okay, so we're all done, so I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Outstanding job.